Swallowed Star. Chapter 488, Fantasy Ocean. At the deepest parts of Fantasy Ocean, within the 21st island, sat a golden-armored black-scaled old man. He was the manager of the Fantasy Ocean. The old man with a face full of black scales opened his eyes and gazed far away. With a dazed look he said, "A Universe Level 9 punk is actually passing the 7th island so easily? Even many Sector Lords can't pass this island, yet he is passing it that easily." Looking at his details. Luo Feng. True Yen Emperor's disciple? True Yen is good at teaching disciples. However, consciousness and willpower cannot be taught. Let's see how many islands this pink can pass. If he passes the 9th island, then that's impressive. Even many pinnacle of Sector Lords cannot pass that. The black-scaled old man smiled. He looked into space and watched Luo Feng's progress through the Fantasy Ocean. After a while, he passed the 8th island? The black-scaled old man's eyes were filled with shock. With a swoosh he stood up. He really passed the 8th? Fantasy Island's 21 islands was actually very similar to passing the 21 levels of the Heavenly Bridge. However, consciousness and willpower were from within and were hard to train. A student-level punk, in terms of willpower alone, may not be weaker than a Sector Lord. Of course, consciousness strength would be much weaker, however just willpower alone was hard to gauge. However, the Fantasy Island alone tested both of them, and not just willpower. His consciousness strength definitely cannot compare to a pinnacle Sector Lord. The black-scaled man's eyes were filled with shock, saying solemnly, "It's extremely tiring for him in Fantasy Island, but obviously his willpower has compensated quite a bit for that. His willpower is sturdy. His determination and willpower is immovable. Actually, they are even stronger than the pinnacle of Sector Lords." 9th Island. The black-scaled old man's eyes were nervous. 9th Island was named as one of the limits of a Sector Lord. Very few Sector Lords can pass this. This Luo Feng, a Universe Level 9 punk, how can he possibly pass this? It's impossible. 9th Island, the mountain rocks and sand were all white. The trees and plants were lush in this island. Luo Feng stood at the peak of the island's 300 to 400 tall mountain. His body upright, eyes cold, gaze like a blade, there wasn't any hint of worry or hesitation. Within a few seconds, the illusion and pressure began to completely engulf Luo Feng. Rumble! Luo Feng felt as though a large mountain had just crashed on his consciousness. This was purely the consciousness strength alone. Even for many Sector Lord pinnacle warriors, their consciousness would immediately be knocked and they would feel dizzy. In that blurry state, one would unwittingly fall into the illusion and lose. Just like how some strong-willed people of Earth would never sign their life or property away. However, after a few punches, kicks in that weary state, they wouldn't even know if they end up actually submitting and signing the papers. One theory. First, heavily damage the consciousness. Once one was in a blurry state, unleash the illusion. Rumble! Almost like a mountain crashing on his consciousness. Luo Feng immediately felt the tremor. He saw the land started to swirl in front of him, as he started to feel dizzy. Heart like a blade. Gather! His consciousness let out a roar. His state of mind, which was in a state close to desperation, immediately reconstructed, and his mind was clear again. Willpower was the general. Consciousness was the soldier. The strength of one's consciousness included one's spirit energy, mental strength and so on. As one's strength grew, it would naturally grow. For example, if a Sector Lord released his spirit pressure, he could easily kill a star traveler or star level. Even if his willpower was normal, his immeasurable strength was simply too much. Luo Feng's consciousness strength was the Golden Horn Beast Domain Lord level 6. The Golden Horn Beast was much stronger than the same level humans. It was comparable to a Domain Lord level 9 or even a Sector Lord level 1 human. Luo Feng's consciousness strength had already reached the pinnacle of Domain Lords. Right now he was under the attack of a Sector Lord pinnacle pressure. Luckily his willpower was incredibly sturdy. With a powerful general, his consciousness solidified. He could withstand the attack and not crumble. If his consciousness level was at the universe level, he would have instantly crumbled. If the soldier is too weak, no matter how strong the general was, it was still useless. Since the soldier wasn't too weak and the general was extremely strong, he still stood a chance. Luo Feng, Little Hai, battled with someone at the Ganwu dojo and was killed by his bodyguards. The scene changed, and while Luo Feng's consciousness was hit, he fell into the illusion. Su Xian's expression was filled with worry as she shouted. That illusion even invaded his memories, attempting to meld with it. What, Little Hai? Luo Feng was shocked. Hard as cold as a mirror, even when a few specks of dust fell, the mirror would still reflect clearly. Luo Feng immediately felt unsettled after being affected by the illusion. The illusion is after all just an illusion. Break. Luo Feng's consciousness solidified and immediately broke through the obstruction, cutting and slicing through the skies. However, this caused the illusionary world to only slightly tremble. This slight tremble alone made Luo Feng smile coldly. His consciousness was like a blade, as quick as lightning. It produced tens of millions of blades. Rumble. It immediately caused the illusionary world to produce an unstable tear. After which it crumbled and the surroundings revealed the scene of the 9th island once again. In the distance a blur of white appeared, the 10th island. 10th island. Luo Feng immediately flew over. The black-scaled old man, who was located at the deepest parts of Fantasy Ocean, in that 21st island, revealed a look of shock. What strong consciousness and terrifying willpower. It's been extremely long since I've seen such willpower. With such willpower, if he doesn't reach the end of his lifespan and fall, he would become an absolute warrior. To actually enter and attempt Fantasy Ocean, it represented one's talents were extremely high. With high talents and exceptional nurturing, an absolute genius with incomparable willpower usually only had two paths: failing at the end or becoming an absolute warrior. In the past, Bolin only made it to the 7th island before failing, and Rong Jun failed at the 6th. These two already had terrifying willpower. But this Luo Feng, the black-scaled old man choked and cleared his throat. This level of terrifying willpower will be very helpful during dangerous life or death situations. As long as there's a threat of survival, unless he meets with an impossible situation, he'll definitely become an absolute warrior. This news I have to inform the higher-ups immediately. The black-scaled old man's expression was serious. Their more valuable one was, the more the Virtual Universe Company would pay attention to them. Creating the Heavenly Bridge, Fantasy Ocean and Undying Altar, all these were to pick out the most exceptional of geniuses. The Undying Altar was the least emphasized of the three, mainly because almost all of the Pinnacle Sector Lords could reach perfection in control of their bodies. As for the Heavenly Bridge in Fantasy Ocean, many Undyings and even Universe Country leaders would still attempt them. Hence, the Heavenly Bridge and Fantasy Ocean were more heavily emphasized. 10th Island. Luo Feng's gaze focused and his consciousness condensed like a mirror and blade. It was incredibly sturdy. The 10th Island's illusion was accompanied by a terrifying amount of pressure. Rumble. Almost like the skies crumbling down on him, the pressure smashed into his consciousness. Within an instant, Luo Feng's consciousness crumbled. 10th Island was a failure. No matter how strong one's willpower was against a normal Undying's consciousness strength, it was like an ant being squashed into nothing. An excellent general can control 10,000 soldiers to move. With a bit of strategy, these soldiers can be controlled just like the extension of one's arm, finally killing the enemy general and their million-strong army while protecting their own. However, if the enemy had over 100 million soldiers which covered the land and skies almost like an endless ocean, that same general, no matter how exceptional he was, he would still die without a doubt. Fantasy Island Core Island 21. The black-scaled old man wrote a letter seriously, sending the detailed news of Luo Feng's progress and emphasizing heavily on how his willpower was terrifyingly strong. The black-scaled old man finally relaxed after sending it out. Following the old rules, I'll inform True Yen Emperor and Jade Emperor. The black-scaled man wrote a simpler version of the report and sent it to these two. According to the rules, Luo Feng would eventually become an underling of Nine-Blade Knight. Hence, the details of his growth had to be constantly recorded and sent to Jade Emperor, who was under Nine-Blade Knight and in charge of such management. And True Yen Emperor was Luo Feng's teacher. He had specially requested the black-scaled old man to send progress about Luo Feng to him. The black-scaled old man gazed into the distant space, saying softly, "Even against tough situations, troubles, difficulties, big enemies and so on, one's willpower can't be that terrifying. And the greater the hatred, even though one's willpower will be strong, they will become easily susceptible to illusions. Such a terrifyingly sturdy willpower, only through special circumstance and situations can it be produced." The black-scaled old man exclaimed. Indeed. For Luo Feng to reach this step, he had indeed met with special circumstances. First reason was that he had been driven since young to become a warrior, and often battle in life or death battles. Second reason was that he had sacrificed his life during the swallowing beast incident. However, the possession was successful. The feeling of such rebirth seemed to have changed his willpower tremendously. The third reason was that due to the golden horned beast's blood and soul influence, it caused Luo Feng to be extremely cold. And with guidance from Hong and Thunder God and the knowledge from thousands of years of Chinese culture, along with the inherited mental state training from his ancestors from these thousands of years, it allowed him to reach a perfect mental state like that of a mirror. Luo Feng had always recognized the importance of mental state training. Yike's death, along with that letter plus the 30 years of study, all had resulted in Luo Feng's mental state rising to yet another level. It had finally reached the level of heart like a blade. Heart like a mirror and blade. Creating a willpower that was so powerful it couldn't be moved. Luo Feng was oblivious to the fact that Watchman of Fantasy Ocean had sent the news about him to the upper management of the Virtual Universe Company. He returned to his own study in his villa at the Absolute Beginning region. Fantasy Island and Heavenly Bridge, I've already reached my limit for these two. Within a short amount of time, I won't be able to make any progress. Luo Feng sat at his desk and looked at the screen of his laptop. Now then, I'll have to choose a mission to train myself.